Here we are.
Told you to walk away. That was my first and last mistake. I'm blue without your face. But what can I do? 'Cause I'm just a sinking ship, and you're just a pair of lips that I've lost in the moment. All I want is for you to come back. Now I'm caught in the middle of life, and I need you to.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, Rashid, and I'm back with my guy, my colleague, my friend, who's been on a trip around the globe, I should say. Carl Zah, how's it going, my guy?
How are you, Rashid? Good to be back.
Yeah, good to have you back, Carl. And right before the show, I have to say this: my daughter came in, my 6-year-old. She came in and she gave me a hug. You may have seen her come in and give me a hug, and she said, "Dad, thank you so much for having Carl back on the show. You know, me and my Nana loves Carl. They love you. You're their favorite person on the show." So I had to tell you that. Carl, let's get right into this. We see the empire becoming more and more desperate, and we see that she is not wielding the power that she once had. Every move that she's making is making it worse for the empire. I want to play a clip for you, and I want your opinion on what's going on right now domestically, because we see the ships moving internationally all across the Caribbean. We see the United States arming Israel to the T. We see all of this. But right now, the home front is breaking up. And I want you to listen to this and give me your assessment after this. So here we are. We'll bring this up on the screen for everybody. And everybody just pay close attention to this. Here we are right now.
We've now entered day 39 of the government shutdown, and for the first time since it started, the Senate will now work through the weekend in an attempt to reach a deal to reopen the government. As CBS News' Kristen Benavides reports, the stalemate is having an impact on air travel and for those who rely on food assistance.
At the 11th hour, the Supreme Court halted a court order requiring the federal government to fund food assistance. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson issued the order in response to an emergency appeal by the Trump administration, which has so far refused to dip into its reserves to fund food assistance. Jackson wrote the lower court should deal with the matter swiftly. Janelle Daniels of New Jersey has suffered. SNAP ran out of funds last week.
It's hard to try to depend on other people to help you. I'm such a very independent, I try to help anybody else in need the best way I can, and it's very hard for me to ask for help.
It comes as air travel has been snarled by the shutdown. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy issued an emergency order for airlines to cut 10% of their flights at 40 major airports due to surging air traffic controllers' sick calls occurring with little warning as they work without pay due to the shutdown.
We see more incursions on tarmacs throughout the country. And we have more complaints from pilots about stress from air traffic controllers and more complaints about the lack of responsiveness from controllers.
This is a reasonable offer.
On Friday, Democrats said they'd be willing to reopen the government if Republicans agreed to extend for another year tax credits for the Affordable Care Act.
The Democrats have gone, they're crazy.
But Republicans are holding firm that the government should reopen before any negotiations take place. Christian Benavides, CBS.
All right. So Carl, on that note, let me move that off the screen 1 second. So Carl, with that said, we see most people don't realize that when it comes to SNAP or or the welfare system, because it's portrayed in the media, just like what they did. They showed two black girls in the car talking about, but it's actually close to half or 2/3 of recipients are white. And why would you think that Trump would turn on his own base, and withhold the money when they need it so desperately? But he is funding the 95+% of the budget of the Ukrainian armed forces, government, pensions, everything.
Well, I mean, it should be obvious by now. Trump doesn't really care about his base, because Trump can always spin everything as being a victory, and majority of his base will believe him. So that means Trump has no accountability. He's not accountable, so he can do whatever he wants. And this is why he initiated a trade war against China, which led to China from stop purchasing soybeans, which most of the soybean farmers are the Republican base. I mean, again, Trump is spinning this as a great resolution. He brought an end to a crisis which he himself created. Trump and the rest of the U.S. governing elite, they don't care about the average people. I don't know how many times I need to repeat that. They only care about lining their own pockets and the pockets of their friends, and the pockets of the financial donors who put them in their place. That is their job in Congress. We have the best politicians that money can buy, and they're not there to actually run it for the interest of average Joe from Michigan. Their goal is to get the votes, get into the position of power, so they continue to funnel money from the bottom to the top, to the 1%. That's what the American political system is designed to do. It's a feature, not a bug. I like to say U.S. government is of the oligarchs, by the oligarchs, for the oligarchs, and it works very well. But this is becoming more and more apparent, I think, to even majority of the Americans now. That's why they all demand change, except Trump himself got elected by posing as an outsider of the establishment, by promising to drain the swamp, to change. Well, nothing changed. We saw this same play, whether from the Republican Democrats. We have Obama from the Democrats, who essentially did the same thing. They're populists. They appeal to the populist sentiment, but as soon as they're in the office, things goes just wrong the same way it always does before. Because sometimes you gotta really ask the question: who really runs the U.S. government? Because no matter who gets into the political office, the fundamental policy doesn't really change. The money continue to funnel to the top, to the 1%. They're fighting about which people among that 1% get most of the money. That's what the so-called uniparty is really about. I mean, it's really a uniparty. The whole Democrat and Republican, they're just fighting on which group of oligarchs get more of the public funds. So this is not unexpected, and right now they're playing politics, do all this grandstanding that's actually actively hurting the country. I mean, who does that? Like the government is supposed to, people expect government to provide basic services, right? Like the air traffic control. That should be working for this is, but they don't care about that. They all they care is about posing for the camera, about optics. And Trump understands very well because he is a reality TV show host. He knows what plays well on TV. But that does not necessarily translate into good policy for the country.
I was watching, I was scrolling through YouTube the other day, and I saw a picture on one of the alternative media sites, a well-respected alternative media site, and I didn't think that they did it on purpose. I just think it was subliminal, something that they have been accustomed to thinking about what's going on with the programs, the EBT or SNAP program and the welfare program. But it caught my eye because nobody addressed this, and I'm going to tell you why. Excuse me. The show is called Redacted, and I'm gonna see if I can pull this up real quick for you guys. I just had it. All right, here we are. So hopefully on here you can see right here, Redacted, and on here, this is what it says. It says Holy SHIT with an exclamation point behind it. So it's drawing our attention to something, right? It's drawing our attention to something. Then it says they are ready to steal food. They are. So now he puts a category of people ready to steal food. Then he says from hardworking Americans. So here is the thing about this. In this picture, it shows a overweight black woman running. This is a picture that is hit the mainstream, well, the alternative media all over, but no one said it. This angry black lady, overweight, running through the grocery store with a and you can tell this Photoshop, with a big sack of steak and hamburger meat and lobsters or whatever. And he says that they are ready to steal, implying that these people, another class of people, are ready to steal food. And this may not be what he meant, but this is the implication of it. From the hardworking, meaning that other people outside of that people are not hardworking. And so what that does with a show that has 1 million or 2 million subscribers, it reinforces stereotypes, and then it widens a class divide that helps further the goals of those in power. And no one addressed that. And I'm like, I know they're more responsible than that, because if you look at it, 50 to 60% of all recipients to EBT and SNAP are Caucasians or white people, right? I think 16 to 18% are black, and 16 to 18% or something like Latino, and then you have the mixture of everybody else in there. But to imply, to put this big overweight angry black woman on there, it's a subtle form of, see, I told you that they were coming for, they were going to be mad. And I thought that these people would have been a little bit more responsible with their thumbnails and their title. Why do you think that the alternative media, and I'm not saying that they meant with it, but I'm saying this is the implication that we're all supposed to be mindful of what we do. This is the implication of it, which is causing a social clash, a social divide, and it is strengthening Trump's supporters or whatever about all of these other people leech off of us, and they are not hardworking, but we are. What do you have to say about that, Carl?
Well, do you remember? There's a famous cartoon of this Wall Street fat cat type of person who hold like a plate full of cookie, and then he sit across the table from two guys, one white guy, one black guy, and there's one cookie on this plate, and then the guy, the Wall Street fat cat is pointing to the black guy and telling the white guy, he's gonna take your cookie, right? This is exactly what's going on, the dynamic going on here. In the United States, the people that get most of the government money, it's not the welfare people on welfare. It's the people on the corporate welfare. It's the people on the Wall Street. It's what we practice in US is socialism for the rich, right? Capitalism for everybody else. Everyone else you have to break your head to survive or die in the capitalist jungle. But for the big banks, for the bankers, they always get bailed. They will always get bailed out with other people's money. It's called socializing the risk, and they don't want you to focus on that. Again, they don't want you to focus on that. They don't want you to focus on those MAGA corporations that's sucking all the money from the public fund. Instead, they want you to point, like you said, they actually visualize it for the rest of the people. Now, see, your enemy is this overweight, angry Black women, single mother on welfare. I mean, this is complete BS. We ignore that hundreds of billions of dollars are now being plowed into an AI bubble. And the OpenAI founder, Sam Altman, right now is lobbying hard in Washington for a government bailout because they realize, this AI bubble is not sustainable. That's real money. I mean, hundreds of billions of dollars to build data centers that I don't know what they produce, but they build a lot of data centers. They buy a lot of GPUs, and now they're asking for a government bailout. So they don't want you to focus on that, right? Because they don't want you to ask questions. Why should government spend hundreds of billions to bail out an AI company that hasn't really produced much public goods? Instead, they want you to focus on the color folks, the immigrants, and China. So this is what they always do. It's the Black people, the brown people, the Chinese, all these damn foreigners, those immigrants. That's really screwing up our society. Well, the people at the top who actually run the show, they're literally laughing to the bank. I mean, this is the same playbook they have been doing over and over. Just because, and you question why alternative media does this. Well, alternative media is fundamentally not that different from legacy media. They want to cash in. I mean, they want to cash in the populist trend. They want to put those rage baits to catch eyeballs on YouTube, so they get more views, so they get more, the more advertisement revenue. And just because they're alternative media doesn't mean they have more credibility than legacy media, right? I mean, especially some of the bigger accounts, the reason they grow to such a big accounts is because they know how to do rage baiting, right? I mean, I think that's what's going on.
Ilya Kuryakin, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, but you said, what the F is Rashid babbling about? Well, I wasn't babbling. If you would have paid attention, I was putting out facts. I was showing you that these people are race baiting and rage baiting to get views and clicks and subscriptions at the expense of other people. And I was showing you and trying to tell you that if we were to look at the numbers, that white people, and this was something that you should have taken offense to, not from me, but from Trump, because he's using the numbers and they're using the numbers to hurt you. That's what they're playing politics, and they're playing cultural war. So what I was trying to inform you about is that they are misrepresenting the truth. And whenever truth is misrepresented, you get hurt. And that's what I was talking about. So we don't have to be disrespectful and say, what the F? I mean, you could just ask. You see, I didn't pull it up in the super chat. I mean, we are allowed on this platform to disagree as long as we're agreeable. We're all adults here. But don't argue with me if we're dealing with facts. That's all I'm saying. Facts over feelings. So now, Carl, I want to play something for you. And this is Donald Trump going on one of his tirades, okay? And this is about 4 or 5 minutes. I want you to pay close attention to this, Carl. And on the backside, we'll talk about this because it's leading us into this thing about Africa and Latin America and about the Belt and Road Initiative and what Trump is doing. So pay close attention.
It's a plot line we've seen before. A humanitarian crisis, a global outcry, and a superpower deciding it has not just the right, but the responsibility to intervene. That script is called the R2P. The the responsibility to protect, a principle endorsed by the UN in 2005. And right now, it is being pulled off the shelf, with Nigeria cast in the lead role, with U.S. President Donald Trump accusing the country of failing to protect its Christian population and threatening military action.
On Nigeria, just wanted to ask you, do you envisage U.S. boots on the ground?
Yes, could be. I mean, a lot of things I envisage, a lot of things. They're killing record numbers of Christians in Nigeria. And they have other countries very bad also. You know that part of the world, very bad. They're killing the Christians and killing them in very large numbers. We're not going to allow that to happen.
But the response from Nigeria's special advisor to the president, exclusively to RT, contradicts Washington's narrative.
The congressmen rely on a data and report that were submitted by a separatist group in Nigeria called the IPOB. That there's a genocide of Christians in Nigeria, which is false, because all intelligence and non-governmental organizations that carry out their research and data about killings in Nigeria, none but these two that have affiliation with IPOB that indicated that there is a Christian genocide. In fact, even the content of the data contradict that.
And while Nigeria is grappling with very real security threats from groups like Boko Haram, its message to Washington was clear. We want help, but on our terms. So why should the world be watching this so closely? We've seen a franchise of this movie before. Let's rewind the tape. It's the 1990s and war is waging in the Balkans. Former U.S. President Bill Clinton made the case for intervention in Yugoslavia, citing a moral imperative to stop ethnic cleansing.
When I ordered our armed forces into combat, we had three clear goals: to enable the Kosovar people, the victims of some of the most vicious atrocities in Europe since the Second World War, to return to their homes with safety and self-government, to require Serbian forces responsible for those atrocities to leave Kosovo. When a people are singled out for destruction because of their heritage and religious faith, and we can do something about it, the world will not look the other way.
Acting without a UN mandate, a US-led NATO coalition launched massive bombing campaign against Belgrade. US and EU policymakers described it a humanitarian war, but it is more of a military intervention justified by the need to protect civilians, even without the full backing of international law. The plot thickened over a decade later in Libya, where the responsibility to protect really comes to work. In 2011, the UN Security Council, for the first time, explicitly invoked the R2P to authorize a no-fly zone and all necessary measures to protect civilians from what officials claimed was violence from Muammar Gaddafi's forces. Resolution 1973 passed, and what was sold as a limited mission to save lives quickly escalated into a full-blown regime change operation.
We are doing it to protect the civilian population from the murderous madness of a regime that, in killing its own people, has lost all legitimacy.
That's why the United States has worked with our allies and partners to shape a strong international response at the United Nations. Our focus has been clear: protecting innocent civilians within Libya and holding the Gaddafi regime accountable. I also want to be clear about what we will not be doing. The United States is not going to deploy ground troops into Libya. And we are not going to use force to go beyond a well-defined goal, specifically the protection of civilians in Libya.
This is an important effort that has garnered the support and the active participation of nations who recognize the significance of coming together in the international community through the United Nations to set forth a clear statement of action to be taken in order to protect innocent civilians from their own government.
NATO's air campaign went from protecting civilians to directly enabling the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi. The aftermath was chaos, a civil war that continues to this day. In fact, the Libyan example is when it became clear as day the R2P has the potential to be used for way more than just civilian protection.
The Libyan case has already given R2P a bad name. The only aspect of the resolution of interest to them was use of all necessary means to bomb the hell out of Libya.
So here we are, back to the beginning. The threat against Nigeria echoes the justifications of Kosovo and the bitter aftermath of Libya. And it seems that a legitimate concern for human rights is once again being weaponized, with the U.S. potentially risking the very destabilization it claims to want to prevent.
So now, Carl, when America thought that she could win the trade war or the sanctions war with China, they started talking about China was the cause of fentanyl in the United States, right? They started talking about that Venezuela is a narco state now, right? And they're talking about Nigeria is killing Christians. And what's crazy, let me bring something up, Carl, before you respond to this. Just let me bring this on the screen for you, because it's absolutely amazing that he said that he won't allow Christians to be killed, even though every organization said that there's no genocide going on except 2 NGOs from the United States. Amazingly, well, one from the United States and one from Britain. So on this screen here, I just want everybody to see on the screen right here. It says Gaza death toll surges past 69,000 as more bodies found in devastation. Now, I want the people to think about this in reality, that Gaza is not just comprised of Muslims. It has Christians, Alawites, and everybody else. Israel bombed one of the oldest churches around. So why didn't Trump make that statement as 69,000 people at least was slaughtered? Holy sites of both Muslims and Christians were destroyed, yet he's so preoccupied with Venezuela and Nigeria. Carl, the floor is yours.
Well, it's the so-called excuses for intervention in Nigeria and Venezuela are just that. They're excuses. The real aim for United States is to counter Chinese influence in both countries, because China has been making strategic investment in both places. China is helping Venezuela to upgrade its oil infrastructure. That's an area, that's a no-no for United States, because Venezuela has one of the largest oil reserve in the world. But traditionally, because Venezuela depended on technology from U.S. companies, they export raw crude oil, and they didn't have enough refining capabilities. So it was actually import the finished product, the refined product. And so what China is helping Venezuela right now is, one, China is importing majority of Venezuelan export of oil. Two, China is helping Venezuela to upgrade its oil industry, to build refineries, so they don't have to import processed petrochemical products. And that is a no-no for United States, because U.S. wants to U.S. want to reserve the Venezuelan oil for itself. People don't realize, even with all these tension against Venezuela, Trump keep on giving waivers to U.S. companies, to Mobil, to ExxonMobil, to continue to import Venezuelan crude into United States, because a lot of the U.S. refineries, they're actually built to process heavy crude, the type of crude that Venezuela produces. So a lot of the oil that U.S. produces from fracking is actually light, sweet oil that's not suited for the refinery in the southern United States. So what U.S. do is they export their shale oil from fracking, and they import Venezuelan crude oil to process in the refinery. And now they see China as a potential competitor coming into their space, and so they are now arming to the teeth to put a stop to that. Nigeria, the whole, the attack on Christians, because there's some attacks by groups like Boko Haram. How did Boko Haram came about? Boko Haram came about because of United States. U.S. Obama's led from behind campaign, the U.S. NATO aerial bombing in Libya enabled the regime change against Gaddafi. When the Gaddafi fell, suddenly a lot of these terrorist groups gained a whole bunch of weapons from the arsenals from Libya, and they flood to the rest of the Sahel region in Africa. And that's when you have all these problems popping up throughout Mali, Nigeria, Niger. All these places suddenly are now facing threats from the terrorist group that United States helped funded and supported when they overthrew Gaddafi. And now they created more excuse and more reason for more U.S. military intervention into Africa. In case of Nigeria, China is putting a lot of investment into the Nigerian into Nigeria, because Nigeria is again one of the largest oil producing countries in Africa.
Yes.
So whenever there's oil, U.S. will come in and bring democracy, right? I mean, they can't because Nigeria already have elections, so they have to come up with a different excuse. Oh, because there's a Christian genocide going on. We have to go there and serve and protect. That's the same rationale for U.S. intervention in Somalia, in Libya. Yeah, this is the same playbook. I mean, people, but we have to point out, majority of the people in the United States is actually against the intervention in Venezuela, and probably Nigeria as well. But the problem is the majority of people in the United States do not make foreign policies. It's the politicians in Washington that make the foreign policy without regard for any public input. I mean, that's what happened. We saw that happen with the war in Kosovo. We saw that happen with the war, the Iraq war. U.S. politicians, they will always do whatever to please the military-industrial complex, because that's how they're funded. This whole racket is set up to continue to fund money into. Sorry, can you hear my son mumbling in the background? He's playing in my room.
Yes, I can hear.
Okay. Let me tell him to be quiet for a second.
Okay. Everybody, listen. So, as we wait for call, I want to thank everybody for your engagements. Please hit the like button. It doesn't cost you a thing. Please subscribe and like. It doesn't cost you a thing. Please go ahead, Carl. Finish.
Yeah. So, in U.S., there's the military-industrial complex require constant feeding. This is why the perpetual war must go on. They just pivot from one war to next, from Afghanistan to Iraq to Libya, and now they want to do Venezuela and Nigeria. The goal is always to funnel money to the military-industrial complex. They arrested Assange because Assange has called out this hoax, this grift. He said the West, the NATO wasn't in Afghanistan to win the war. The whole purpose of the war is to wash vast sum of money from the taxpayer basis of North America and Europe into the hands of a very small transnational security elite. That's what's going on. So what they have realized, the United States cannot take China head on. They have, as China's strength become more apparent every day, as they just find out in the latest round of trade war. So instead, what they try to do now, they try to do a Cold War 2.0 scenario. They're like, okay, maybe we cannot do a hot war and win against China. Let's do a Cold War 2.0 because we won Cold War 1.0. We know how this will end. Right, so we'll try to circle China, contain China, block it off, and then we wage a series of proxy wars, color revolution, and regime change on China's periphery. And but this is silly. This is, again, this does not. How is this going to help average American Joe in Michigan or Idaho? It doesn't. It's designed, again, to funnel the money to the top 1%.
And I think another move that it is making, it is trying to weaken China's geopolitical standing. As you say, they're lighting fires all around China's periphery. But one of the major things that we can't lose focus of is that Venezuela and Nigeria started accepting the yuan for their oil and for trade with China, and this is a no-no. And whenever look what happened to Gaddafi when he went for the gold dinar. Look what happened to Saddam Hussein when he switched from the U.S. dollar to accepting euros. Look what happened to all of the nations. The United States manufactured a threat, then went in militarily to try to destabilize or overthrow. But the thing is that, as you said, they can't go directly against China militarily at this moment. So what they're doing, they're following the same blueprint that they used against Russia. As the Soviet Union collapsed, they started gobbling up all of the former Soviet territories, and the other nations that were allies with Russia that were not Soviet territories. The United States started weakening and sending terrorists in there. Look what they've done to Syria. Look what they've done to Georgia. Look what they've done to Ukraine. All of this stuff, like most people don't know that the empire is playing for keeps, because they understand that they're fighting a losing battle politically, geopolitically, and now economically against not only China, who has lifted up 850 million people from poverty to the middle class, which is, I might add, the entire combined population of the United States and Europe. But now they're realizing that it is the entirety of the global South that is reaching out for something more tangible. What do you have to say on that, Carl?
Well, this is actually why they also play the divide and conquer and cultural war inside United States, because a lot of Americans have realized the system is not working for them. So to prevent people from revolting against this the overlords in Washington, guess what? They try to divide us by race. This is the American ruling class has always done successfully, to prevent any kind of class solidarity from forming across the working class people. They play racial politics, and they do that very successfully because U.S. let's face it, U.S. is foundationally a very racist nation, and so they continue to play the same tricks, divide and conquer, to keep the populace in United States distracted from the real domestic issues that's facing them, and to point fingers at imagined foreign enemies. It's the immigrants or China, and this is why we have to plow $500 billion in the AI Stargate project, because the AI race with China is existential. Like, who says what's existential about like an AI race with China? Like, is Chinese Terminator gonna show up in America and start wiping out everybody? This whole fear mongering is how the grifters get the government funding, get the money. By government money, I mean everybody else's money. And instead they want you to focus. Oh no, it's those welfare queens that's taking your hard-earned wage, right? But don't worry about the government. Hundreds of billions of dollars of government bailout we're asking for the big banks, for the AI companies, for the military-industrial complex. Don't worry about that. This is sad, but unfortunately, they have been very effective in doing this and playing this game for a very, very long time now.
why do you think that the American people haven't revolted? Now, and I'm going back to this about the withholding of SNAP benefits and other and pay for federal employees, and yet and Trump uses in his tone, he says that the dumb Democrats are doing such and such. And I want everybody to know that I'm neither Republican or Democrat. I'm apolitical. I believe the system is corrupt from the bottom up, and that's just the way it is. I don't get involved in the political realm. I only talk geopolitics and economics. So I want you to understand I have no horse in the race. So why do you think that Trump can get away with doing what he's doing to the population, as he says that the dumb Democrats won't release money, they won't pass this bill, and yet it has not stopped the funding for the Ukraine war. It has not stopped the funding for the government of Ukraine. It has not stopped the pensions that the United States pays to the Ukrainian civil service people. Why are not the American and the other people outraged about this hypocrisy? And why isn't his own base now standing up saying, hey, listen, politics aside and politics be damned. Why do you still have the money for research and development on these destructive weapons? Why are you still giving money here? Why are you still funding ISIS? Why are you meeting with a head chopper in the White House? Why do you think the people of America are so docile and so timid when it comes to that?
Well, one thing, Trump, you have to give him credit for being a very good snakes oil salesman, right? I mean, like the cowmen, they're very charismatic, at least to the people who believe them. And Trump got his base by hook and sinker, and those people will believe whatever comes out of his mouth. And so this is why Trump can do what he does. And the whole goal is always the whole goal of the U.S. government is never about, making sure to provide public goods, to provide public infrastructure, to make sure the air controllers across the country still working. That is not what the U.S. government is set up to do. It's set up. Why the money keep on going to Ukraine? Well, a lot of the money comes back in the form of payment to U.S. military contractors. So that is what U.S. government is designed to do: is continue to fund the money to the military industrial complex. So that's a feature, not a bug. And again, that it does very well. And this is why when they stop, the government shut down, those food assistance ended, and the federal air traffic controller not working properly. Well, that's not the main point of the U.S. government. The main point of the U.S. government is to funnel money to the top 1%. This is why the war must go on. This is why the funding to Ukraine must go on. I think by now there are some people. I think I'm saying like all the MAGA crowd is kind of completely bamboozled by Trump. But I think now there is some cognitive dissonance even among the MAGA crowd. And like now you do see people who are questioning this continuing of the perpetual war, even though Trump came to office promising to end Ukraine war within 24 hours of his election. Remember that? Mm-hmm. But it's again, this is it's sad. It's very sad. Why U.S. public hasn't revolted? I think the U.S. public has been continuously propagandized for decades, and then they have been continuously demoralized by the uniparty system, right? You have people like Obama who promised change and then betrayed them to the Wall Street bankers. Obama just became the face of Wall Street. And then you have Trump from the right, from the appeal to the populism on the right. Again, he's of course, thoughtful for the Gen Awards handing out every day. And so American public has been very demoralized by the political system. I think these, and they're being divided by racial politics, because that's what the Washington elite do. They know to prevent any kind of class solidarity forming among the working class, they can just keep playing the race cards, and this works perfectly every freaking time. This has been for the last at least couple hundred years. But this is how it is. And I think yeah, I think it's the for people in the imperial core, it's just people have been demoralized. I think that's one real reason that there hasn't been a popular revolt. And they're very good at coming out with when the oligarch sees this with too much discontent is breeding, they're also very good about coming out with a candidate who appeal to the populism on one side or the other, and to let people to believe, oh, this time will be different. This guy will bring change. But then they will be disappointed again and even more demoralized about real political change in the United States.
Shout out to M Sparks for the $5 super chat. Shout out to Flying Crocodile 46 for the $10 super chat. And shout out to Flying Crocodile 46 for another $10 super chat. Thank you so much for your super chats. Now, Carl, I want to bring something up to you. And I want you to give me your honest opinion on this. Prior to the Charlie Kirk, is that his name? Because I didn't really know much about the guy before this. Prior to that, Trump couldn't shake the Epstein files. He couldn't shake what was going on. No matter what he did, no matter who he negotiated with, no matter what was going on, it could not have been pushed to the back burner. And all of a sudden, now it has no life, no legs, and nobody is following up on it. Do you believe that this was a psyop, or do you believe that what happened they used to kill any doubt and then to unify his base back, because he was losing his base because they were fussing about the wars, the funding of Ukraine, the divided home, the growing homelessness and poverty, and all of a sudden Kirk goes the way of the dinosaurs, and this is no pun intended, and all of a sudden his base is united, and nobody brings up the Epstein's file that Trump said that he would release.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying there's a conspiracy to kill Charlie Kirk, but they have played the events very well to, as you say, it's a big distraction for all the problems were plaguing the Trump administration to that point. And suddenly they pivot to, oh, look at what all these radical leftists are coming out to get you, to get the people you like. They're trying to shut down our voice. It's that fear, right? It's like politics is like the stock market nowadays, driven by greed and fear. And fear plays very well. This is how they try to get their drive, as you say, congeal their base together again. And it's a trick as old as time, and it works every freaking time. I'm very unfortunate because we need more media literacy in this country, in the United States. For people who are actually paying attention, you brought it up, for example, Rashid. It's pretty obvious what's going on. But for many people who are just busy going through their lives, trying to hold down a job or two, trying to support their family, they can be very easily swayed by these headlines, because that's what only time people have to read anymore. They just read headlines, and like they learn it very well from the Nazis. If you just repeat lies 1,000 times, it becomes the truth. So they inundate the whole media space with things they want you to believe. And after a while, by osmosis, many people, start to accept their line. There was a survey that just came out that says back in 2017, when Trump first became president, the Americans who had negative views of China is about 40%. Today, it's 75 or 77%. I mean, what has changed in the span of 7 years, 8 years? It's propaganda. It's propaganda. It's very intensified propaganda. This is, but people fall for it. People fall for it every time. This is how they keep people from revolting. Again, it's an immigrant. You're losing your job. You're struggling. It's a welfare queens. It's the immigrants. It's the Chinese. It works every time.
So Carl, do you believe that there will be an attack on Venezuela?
This is hard to say. I think what Trump is trying to do right now is he's still trying to intimidate, a lot by putting all these military assets around Venezuela. He's trying to create an atmosphere of fear, and he's trying to work with elements within Venezuela who are anti-government to hopefully do a color revolution or regime change type of scenario. This is why Machado got Nobel Peace Prize. The Nobel Peace Prize that Trump himself very much won, but they have to give it to her because she's very useful, because she has gone on record publicly calling for support from American military intervention in Venezuela. Imagine this, the Nobel Peace Prize winner advocating for military solution against her own country. We literally live in 1984. Peace is war, right? And so I think, and Trump is a type of the person. I don't think he's into like the long-term commitments, right? Long-term commitments meaning a quagmire scenario where U.S. will have to spend a lot of political capital doing a occupation of Venezuela. So what Trump goes for is low-hanging fruits. He thinks Venezuela is the weakest link. And this is why he's going after Venezuela. But I think they're trying to do it on the cheap. They're going to do it by military intimidation. And the worst, they might even, employ the U.S. Air Force to do some bombing run or something. They will probably, the military intervention, if it were to happen, will be more like what Obama did in Libya. They've been sending Air Force to bomb the country, and they're hoping anti-Maduro forces inside Venezuela will rise up and overthrow the government. I think that's kind of the game they're playing for right now. But I don't see like an outright invasion is in the cards, because that just required too much resources, which United States right now is facing serious resource constraint. And there's one reason Maduro is distributing rifles all throughout country is, I think, serve two purposes. One is to show United States that if you do decide to invade Venezuela, you're going to have a very tough time of occupation. Two is to make sure that the populace are armed, so to prevent a coup scenario where they will try to do a coup to regime change in Venezuela. If you arm the people, if you arm your supporters, that will make it less likely. I think those probably two reasons Maduro did that. But we have to continue to monitor the situation. But I think right now they are still in the kind of bluffing phase. They're trying to do regime change on the cheap, which means continue to fund the opposition, to create an atmosphere of fear and intimidation, and to get people to rise up against Maduro's government. the most I could see is maybe they will send in the Air Force and do some bombing runs, but I don't see it. I don't see like a large amphibious landing in Venezuela anytime soon. Because when is the last time U.S. has done against a country Venezuela size, right? I mean, like back in the days when for the Iraq operation, United States mobilized 250,000 troops. They at that time the U.S. Navy, U.S. Army still have those Army transport ships that's capable to transfer half 250,000 troops all the way to Persian Gulf. Today, guess what? The Navy, the U.S. military has scattered the whole Army transport vessel program. So they're gonna have some problem to round up. For a big invasion to happen, you will take months of preparation, just like what happened lead up to Iraq War. We're gonna Right now what we see is buildup of naval forces and air force asset in the region. So this is why I don't think an imminent invasion of Venezuela is in the cards yet in the immediate future.
I think when you brought it up to the Libyan scenario, the main differences in that scenario is that Libya had antiquated air defense systems. They only had like S-200 air defense systems. They didn't have the Panzer. They didn't have the bulk system. They had an antiquated air force. Venezuela has upgraded. They have F-16s and they have some of the most modern Su-30s. So and they have those long range strike missiles that can hit warships at sea. So I think that this is what's holding the U.S. at bay. And remember that Venezuela also has at least 2 to 3 batteries of the S-300 system. They have multiple batteries of updated Panzer systems that can fight drones real good. And they have the new versions of the bulk systems. So any aerial strikes would come at a great risk too, because Venezuela has standoff strike weapons with the Su-30s. They have the upgraded Su-30 fighters with the upgraded missiles that have a range that far exceeds U.S. missile ranges. So the U.S., for them to do an air raid on Venezuela, they would have to not only be outside of the 12-mile legal boundary, but they would have to be out something like another 100 kilometers out. And who's to say that the ships would be there when they get back, especially as Russia and China are helping aid Venezuela in any way that they can. So I think this is what more than anything is putting the pause on it, because the U.S. has something to lose. And think about the losses if she suffered air losses in her own backyard. This would make the empire look that much more weak to Iran and Yemen and to North Africa. And now you will have more smaller nations bucking up, and they cannot really start a color revolution because everyone has been put down. Remember when they kidnapped the Honorable Hugo Chavez out of office, and the people rose up and they demanded that they bring him back to Venezuela, to Caracas, or they would tear up everything in Venezuela that was American and Western owned. Well, we see Maduro has some of that same backing and same popularity, along with his generals and intelligence chiefs that are close to him. So this would be a very hard pull for the United States vis-a-vis what happened in Libya, because they had infiltrated certain tribes in Libya to help aid NATO to do what they did. Don't you think so, Carl?
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, it's the last time U.S. pulled a successful military intervention in West Hemisphere is, back in the 80s and early 90s against Grenada and Panama. I mean, those are lots smaller in size compared to Venezuela. So, yeah, I think they will keep on cranking up the pressure diplomatically, economically, and militarily, and hoping that Venezuela will collapse on itself. But I don't see. I mean, they have been doing that for decades already. Venezuela has been under siege by U.S. for decades, and they're still holding out. So, I think it would take a lot more than intimidation from Trump.
And so where are we now? Let's transfer ourselves over now to West Asia, or what they call the Middle East. Where's the standing? Because we know the United States is constantly unloading cargo to Israel. We see Israel violating the so-called ceasefire, and there's not a word uttered out of Trump or Washington's mouth. Where is this going? And do you think that the U.S. leadership ever stop and pauses for a while to see that they are discrediting themselves and showing themselves to be global hypocrites before the world, and this is helping to speed up their fall?
Well, I don't think they worry about the public image of the United States anymore. I mean, if you look at the opinion polls, global opinion polls, just from 2024 to 2025, the U.S. standing in the world has fallen a great deal as a result of Trump's tariff war against everybody. So I don't think they worry about public standing or image at this point. They just don't care. They don't care because they're full of hubris that they have all this power at their disposal, that they can do whatever they want. I mean, that's basically Trump's message to the world. We are United States. We're the most powerful nation. We will do whatever we want, and you will just have to take it. That hasn't played. Surprisingly, that didn't play very well in the world opinions of the United States. But U.S. being U.S., one thing I do appreciate about Trump though is his honesty about U.S. imperialism. Right? I mean, Obama and Biden, they would even deny there's a U.S. empire. Mm-hmm. Trump is like, yeah, we're an empire, and you will pay for it. And that's why I love Trump.
So now, Carl, let us talk about this the Bereznik missile that Russia demonstrated, and the new weapons. Now, people are calling this a game changer because they said that it loitered for X amount of hours, and it had multiple warheads, and they said that this puts Russia far ahead in the missile technological gap than anybody on Earth. But as you and I were talking before the show, and I brought up to you that China did this exact missile test with a more powerful missile in 2021, and everybody seemed to have forgotten it. As a matter of fact, when General Milley was in office, as a matter of fact, if you give me 1 second, this is what was said. Let's see. Here it is. This was published October the 27th, 2021. And it was on Sputnik News. And it says, U.S. top general says alleged Chinese hypersonic missile launch was very close to a Sputnik moment. Now, I said that before I go further because people are thinking that Russia may have to share its technology with China, which implies that China does not have the wherewithal within itself or the capabilities to have this technology itself when China demonstrated it in 2021. And it goes like this. Beijing, however, denies that the alleged hypersonic missile launch took place. As Financial Times reported earlier this month, China insists that it launched a new reusable space rocket around the same time as the FT report. Chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, has stated in an interview with Bloomberg that the recently reported launch of a hypersonic missile by China has left Washington very concerned. The general went as far as to put its significance next to the launch of the first artificial satellite, Sputnik, by the USSR, which alarmed and then the U.S. government as it showed that America was losing the space race. What we saw was a very significant event of a test of a hypersonic system, and it is very concerning. I don't know if it's quite a Sputnik moment, but I think it's very close to that. It has all of our attention. And in this, it said that this missile was shot out in space and it traveled around the globe at China's wishes. And China had it out there loitering. And then when China chose the target, it then zoomed in on the target with multiple warheads hitting the target. Now, why didn't that make as much noise as the Bereznik, which it seems like is doing the exact same thing? And I'm not taking anything from Russia. I'm just saying that China had a similar missile test in 2021.
I think the Bereznik is a little bit different. That it's a nuclear, it has nuclear propulsion, and it's actually a subsonic missile. It's not a hypersonic missile. You travel below the speed of sound, but what it's capable of doing is to loiter in space and pick the optimal moment to strike where it is strike. China has that capability, but China's hypersonic missile is not nuclear powered. But they, as you mentioned, they have the capability to travel at hypersonic speed and also loiter for a long time. And I think they're a little bit too different technology. But you're right. I mean, there's still a lot of people in U.S. in particular, because decades of propaganda. Whenever you present them with advancement in Chinese technology, they will say, "Oh, China stole that." Of course, China stole the hypersonic missile design from the United States. That's why U.S. doesn't have it. So then they will say, "Oh, it's a Temu missile. It's filled with water." There's still a lot of Hopian and Copian about China's capability versus the West. And I think you also hit the nail on the head. Your comments earlier when we talk about this, that there is a kind of almost like a racial dimension to this. They're like, okay, Russia is a great power because it's a white majority nation, and whereas China is a non-Western, non-white nation that's just risen recently. So people tend to be a lot more dismissive of China's achievement, because it calls into some fundamental questions about Western superiority if you were to accept that. So I think there is that at play as well. But the whole point is both China and Russia, they have been updating their arsenals, especially their delivery capability for their strategic weapons. And this is something that United States is falling behind. But there's also an element of U.S. military-industrial complex are hyping those achievements by Russia and China to justify, again, more money to be spending on U.S. military program. This is why you have, Pentagon, they will come out with a white paper or some think tank paper a few times a year saying, "Oh, we're falling behind China and Russia. This is why we need $1 trillion Pentagon defense budget," right? I mean, they're literally demanding somewhere up to $1 trillion investment to upgrade American nuclear arsenal. And one of their justification is, oh, China is increasing the size of the nuclear arsenal. They're going to increase it from their few hundreds all the way up to 1,000 by 2030. That's not good, because that's going to approach our number. So we must build more. And so we need more money. This is all it's about. And a lot of this military program in U.S. today is really, it's not about fighting wars or winning wars. It's all about grit. It's all about sucking public money into their coffers. And that's how F-35 program come about. And they do that job very well. F-35 is actually great for what it's designed to do, which is to send a piles of money to the ways of military contractors.
Now, Brooke Chen says, and this is a good comment you and I can address. He says, I'm curious about your guys' predictions on the comparison between U.S. Air Force versus China's and Russia's Air Force in 2030, especially since now the U.S. says it will have the F-47 in operation by 2030. First of all, the U.S. is still having problems with the F-35. That's number one. And before we go further, we have 141 people in the building. Please hit the like button, okay? So listen. When it comes to just sheer warplanes, the United States is the largest air force in the world. But when you combine it with drones, China becomes the world's largest air force because it has capabilities unheard of with drone warfare. And we saw glimpses of that in how Pakistan had the brief skirmish with India, and how Pakistan they were using control centers to strike place, and this was updated by the Chinese. So we're seeing that the Chinese, as the U.S. said, may surpass the United States as the largest air force in a few years. But they've already surpassed them as the largest army. They've already surpassed them as the largest navy. And this is why the United States said it was crucial in the next 16 to 18 months to prevent China's rise, because after that, China would then supersede the United States in almost every domain that the United States dominated in. Carl, I know you have something to say on that.
Well, first of all, I'm willing to stake majority of my money, which is not that much, on that U.S. will not have F-47 by 2030. Because look, China already have 2 prototypes of 6th generation stealth fighters flying. Mm-hmm. Currently, the F-45 still only exists on PowerPoint presentation. How the heck are you going to have it in operation by 2030? I mean, we're only like 5 years away, folks. You don't even have a prototype. How the hell are you going to be able to put it into operation? I mean, you still have many years between prototype to actual mass production and to get commissioned by the Air Force. If United States is China and make that claim, then that will be a little bit more credible. But U.S. does not have that kind of industrial base anymore. I'm sorry, man. It's very good at making PowerPoint presentations, but to actually manufacturing, that's a different story. So by 2030, I think, or at least early 2030s, I think you will probably see China commission its 6th generation stealth aircraft into their Air Force, and by which U.S. will have no counter, because the best they can do is F-35s. And China just recently commissioned their 3rd aircraft carrier, the Fujian, and it had the Fujian is basically similar to the most advanced U.S. supercarrier, USS Ford, in that they have electromagnetic catapults. Except in China's case, China actually launched their J-35 stealth fighter from their electromagnetic catapults on their Fujian, whereas the United States, even up to this day, USS Ford electromagnetic catapults still cannot launch F-35s. Keep that in mind. And then you have Trump who come out and say, oh, that's because electromagnetic catapult is a stupid idea. I love steam catapults, right? Because Trump is going to make the United States Navy the next steampunk fiction, right? He will be the steampunk president because the steam catapults work so much better. But I mean, I understand, because Trump. You have to understand, Trump, his peak year was in the 1980s, right? And like when he was, partying with Epstein back then. And that was his peak. So his memory of U.S. power is stuck in 1980s with things like Top Gun, right? Top Gun. You see that they launched the F-18 from the deck of U.S. Aircraft carrier with all the smoke and steam coming out. It looks beautiful. It looks great in movies. So that's what Trump remembers, and that's what Trump likes. He does not understand new technology. He does not understand that the advantage of electromagnetic catapults versus steam catapults is that once you go electric, it's a lot easier. It's a lot faster. Steam, there's a lot more processing. You have to process a lot of water to generate the steam, and it's hard to control the level of the force you put behind the steam catapult. Whereas with electric, you can it's just a dial. You can control the amount of power you want to launch, how much weight. You can very easily adjust the amount of weight you launch. And that makes all the difference in the real battle scenario, because we're talking like 10 minutes, 15 minutes in a battle, that could make all the difference. Like the electromagnetic catapults can just help you launch an airplane much faster, much more smoothly. And that's a capability right now the U.S. Navy does not have. I mean, this is another area where China is leapfrogging U.S. because the reason USS Ford cannot launch F-35 on its electromagnetic catapult because USS Ford was older design, and by the time when they designed USS Ford, they haven't finalized the design for F-35 yet, right? Because the all branch of U.S. military, they all want to have their input on what F-35 should or should not do. And so in the end, F-35 became this Frankenstein monster that doesn't do anything in particular very well. But it becomes very heavy. It becomes too heavy for the electromagnetic catapults on USS Ford to be able to launch. What China was able to do, because the Fujian is a lot more newer, so China put all the latest technology into it, and this is why they're able to launch their own 5th generation stealth fighter. So in many ways, I think the China will move further and further ahead in the coming years. I mean, just look at the pool of human capital China have worked with versus United States. Like I said, China graduate 9 times more STEM engineers every year than US. That makes a difference. China graduated like 4.5 million STEM graduates every year. I mean, that number keep on climbing as year goes by. So US will fall further and further behind. I mean, even look at the AI race between US and China. Look at all these AI engineers that Zuckerberg spent hundreds of millions of dollars. He was hiring these top AI engineers and giving them like $100 million compensation packages. Look at who Zuckerberg hired. They're all Chinese. Like the AI race between US and China is essentially between the Chinese working US and the Chinese working in America. And we're not talking about Chinese Americans raised and born in the United States. If you look at the top AI talent in Silicon Valley, most of them graduated from Chinese university in China. So they came straight out of China. And what Trump has done since his term, he's doing the best to prosecute Chinese origin researchers and scientists, so making it increasingly difficult for Chinese talent to come to United States. And so more Chinese are actually leaving US now, going back to the motherland. So that gap, the talent gap, is only going to continue to grow between US and China. And this is why US military has been crying for years now about this, have a very short, limited window to contain China. But my personal opinion, that window has already passed.
Yeah,
that has been demonstrated by the recent China's victory parade, when they display all the goodies they have in their arsenal. I mean, that was to send a strong message to the United States. We will no longer be contained. You cannot contain us. And I think that message is also taken in Washington, because then we saw that Pentagon leak about that paper. They say, oh, we should no longer prioritize containing China, but let's focus on West Hemisphere. Let's pick on opponents much more smaller than our size. Like let's pick on Venezuela, for example. So I think that's what they're focused on right now. They're focused. They're trying to shift from directly confronting China to proxy war and chipping at China's influence at periphery in places like Venezuela, in places like Nigeria, and I don't think they will succeed. I just given the U.S. track records, I just don't think they will succeed in this moment. And this is also at the time when China is also sharing their advancement with the rest of the world. For example, in AI, Chinese company like DeepSeek, Kimi, they're making everything open source. So they, so I remember reading this tweet. So when this tech person reporter, she met with this some African delegate at a recent AI conference, and the African delegate told her, so like, thanks to China, we're no longer going to have an AI apartheid. Where U.S. hold all the AI goodies and charge us absorbent fee for it. Because China made it freely available for everyone by making it open source. And so the other nations in the global south can also partake in the coming AI revolution. So this is where China will outcompete United States in providing global public goods. And I think even despite all these propaganda, you can see the global opinions on China and United States is shifting, particularly in the global South countries. I mean, now, like, most people in global South are viewing China favorably versus U.S. I mean, you still have the holdout in the imperial core. In U.S., Europe, there's still a lot of anti-China sentiment, because in those places, the Anglo media still hold the sway over public opinion. But outside of that bubble, outside this U.S. imperial bubble, many countries in the global South now view China favorably, and with good reasons.
And Carl, you forgot about when you were talking about the Fujian, they have working elevators because because the U.S. had trouble and their elevators continue to break down on their aircraft carriers. Also, the United States just announced that they will be upgrading the F-15 for another and using that for another 20 to 30 years, and that's integrated technology. On top of that, China did something that the United States did not do. The United States had a 20-year head start in railgun technology. China actually has working railguns on their destroyers, and the United States gave up on trying to master that technology. You forgot about. So I know you want to comment on that, but I didn't forget.
China. What China is very good at is put those innovation into practical application. The common cope in the West is, the West innovates. That's how we always keep ahead of China. Well, but then you set on your innovation for like 20, 30 years and don't do anything with it. Like, the example is solar industry. The United States started the whole solar industry, yet it's China that made it into mass production to produce at an economy of scale, made it affordable for everyone. And another example is the thorium nuclear reactor. The thorium nuclear reactor was originally developed as a concept at Oak Ridge Lab in United States. And again, they killed it because they didn't want that. They didn't want to go that route. And later, when a NASA scientist posted the whole design on the internet, China took a look at it. So like, okay, maybe this could work. Let's work on it. So China spent 10 years tinkering around it, and they got it working. And so China, so it doesn't matter if you have innovation if you cannot apply it. You cannot make it into practical application. And China is very good at turning every innovation into affordable product. And that they have done it with everything, from solars to EVs. This is why there will be, in the coming years, there will be only one area where U.S. will continue to outproduce China, and you'll be in the copium production. The copium and opium production will continue to go through the roof in the U.S. as China continue to rise and not be contained.
I was reading an article a few days ago. They were saying that China added a forest to its desert, roughly the size of Texas, over the last 20 years. I was thrown back because you don't hear that in the West. They turned desert into forest land in less than a decade or so. So this shows you something. And another thing I want to touch on before I forget is that how can the United States outcompete China at this moment when they are now outsourcing their shipbuilding to South Korea?
U.S. military industrial complex already gave up on industrializing United States, because now they have recently there's an article from War on the Rock. They're arguing, okay, right now, because the U.S. naval shipyards is limited, we have limited capacity, so it actually makes sense to outsource more commercial shipping to Korea and Japan, so we can reserve all our shipbuilding capability in the United States to produce warships to compete with China, which is pretty preposterous. The reason China is able to produce a lot of warships is because they build commercial ships. They come to produce 55% of the world's shipping fleet. And that's how they gain the knowledge and the know-how that can apply to build naval ships. And this is the kind of thinking that led to U.S. shipyard atrophy to the point it is today. U.S. used to have the world's largest shipbuilding capability around World War II. That's how U.S. won, because U.S. could outproduce everybody, particularly Empire of Japan. But after around 1960s, 70s, that's when the Wall Street guys, they did their numbers. They're like, hey, commercial shipping, let's outsource to Korea and Japan. and then what they have is like, okay, we'll just reserve the shipyard in U.S. for building for Pentagon. And so it was a double whammy, because on one hand, they're losing a lot of jobs, a lot of knowledge of building ships, because as these shipyard gets moved overseas to Japan and Korea. And on the other hand, the ones that's remaining, because they have guaranteed government contract to produce for Pentagon, they have less incentive to innovate, to apply latest technology, because they got guaranteed government money. So this is how U.S. shipbuilding got left behind. And this is why today Pentagon is trying to skirt there was actually a legislation from U.S. Congress that says U.S. should not build warships in foreign countries. So now they're skirting that legislation by saying, let's retrofit our warship in Korea and Japan, because they can do it much cheaper. They can do it at a quarter of the cost. Well, the reason they could do it quarter of the cost, because they have been on the recipient side of all this offsource of shipbuilding capability from the United States for the last 40 years, 40, 50 years. And they have built the economy of scale. And whereas the U.S. were happily deindustrializing itself, at the behest of Wall Street, and right now, because it does not lacks the economy of scale, that's why everything is done at much more higher cost. And this is and their solution is let's outsource even more to South Korea and Japan. Let's even like put our warship to Korea and Japan to have them retrofitted, because right now their argument is that our time and money is limited right now. We have a small time window to compete with China. We can't be bothered to reindustrialize United States to rebuild the industrial base. We need to reach parity with Chinese Navy. So the way we do it is we loop in the naval building capability of Korea and Japan. So essentially, the Pentagon, the U.S. military industrial complex, gave up on the U.S. own manufacturing capability. So they're even outsourcing the warship to Korea and Japan. And yeah, this is the direction of the U.S. have been going for the last 40 years, and this is no sign of stopping. And the Trump tariff, which is supposed to bring back to industrialization back to U.S., that ain't happening. Sorry, folks. Because to do that, you need human capital. You need people who know what they're doing, who are trained. What happened is, back in the 1970s, when U.S. would still have all these industries, you have all these people with knowledge and know-how. Now, 40 years later, those people have retired. You have failed to train a whole new generation of people who will know how to do things when all these industry will get offshore to overseas. And now you think tariff will work to protect your domestic industry if you have domestic industry. The problem is U.S. have to build everything from scratch now, and to do that, you need to import Chinese machine tools, and you need to spend 10 years to train people, and so this is a gargantuan effort. It will spend decades. That's not what U.S. government is designed to do, folks. U.S. government is not designed to do industrial policy the way Chinese government can do. Chinese government is structured to do industrial policy. U.S. government is structured to funnel money to the top 1%. Each government is very good at its own job, what it's designed to do. But when U.S. try to copy China now in industrial policy, it's doing it in a half-ass way. So I don't put too much stock in that. If even Pentagon is giving up on reindustrialization of America, what can you say?
Carl, man, you hit it out the park again, my brother. We got to do this again very, very soon. Thank you for joining me on the most powerful platform, man. I really, really appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you, Rishi. Anytime.
All right, man. I'll talk to you later. I'll send you the video, my friend.
Bye-bye.
All right. Everybody, listen. The like button. It doesn't cost you anything. Even if you don't agree with everything we're saying, like and subscribe. Share the video. We're adults here. See, the problem with everybody is that if you don't agree with somebody, you get in your feelings, right? But as an adult, let us be agreeable to disagree. We don't have to act like savages because we don't agree 100%. All right? So what I'm saying to you all this, and I have to say this in closing every time I go off there. Please do right by others. Not because there's some material gain to be had or because there's some accolades behind it. Do right by others because it's the right, the humane, and the godly thing to do. Because even when no one else is watching you, remember that God Almighty is watching you. As my late, great, and magnificent mother would always say, God sits high, meaning on the throne of power, but he looks low at his creation. And know that I love each and every one of you who loves truth. But know that the love that I have for you will always pale in comparison to the love that the true and living God has for you. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true. But above all things, remember this, to stay righteous. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life, and I hope I'm representing you, mom. Hey, everybody, thank you so much. Deuces, we're out of here. Peace.
without your faith. But what can I do? 'Cause I'm just a sinking ship, and you're just a